Hey guys, welcome to episode 3 of Zygrene Car Talk. Today is going to be the first time that we're actually going to answer and address some of the user submitted questions. So thank you guys again for submitting all the really interesting topics and questions. Some of them I kind of figured would be the first ones, just given, my background and your background. And if you guys haven't noticed, we have a guest here today. This is Alex. He's really into obviously cars, but more so than that, tracking on a budget, and that kind of leads into some of our first topics of the session. But before we do that, let's let Alex introduce himself and do the draw my car activity.
So we're springing something on you, and we'll probably do this to a lot of people. But what we're gonna do is have you draw just really quickly, get like a minute, something that's like a car that's of significance to you, and then we're gonna try to guess it, and then you can talk about it. We'll talk about that a little bit. But yeah, so here, this is the surprise of the day.
Just make it like a 1 minute thing.
Yeah, just a quick thing. You can pick a color.
I'll try my best.
Yeah.
I don't have many cars to choose from, but
okay, that's good.
Let's get it going. So,
yeah.
As I said, my name is Alex, or Fenton said, my name is Alex. I've been tracking for about 3 years now, and I've done about 15 to 17 track days and had a lot of fun with each one. I mean, of course, you have your minor setbacks with some of them, but it happens. And overall, you just gotta keep a positive mindset and have fun. And yeah, that's the main objective. So.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. So while he's doing the draw my car, the fun little activity, we're going to have some topics being introduced. So Fenton, why don't you go ahead and do that?
Yeah, so you guys can probably guess what the first topic is going to be. But so Kyle Tice commented on the number 2 episode on the Supra. He said, enjoying the Car Talk podcast. As far as topics go, I think it would be cool to hear your personal opinion on starting HPDE or high performance driving event stuff. Track days, what to do to prepare for them, how to get the most education out of them, to see the most improvement, et cetera, and then our opinions on which cars to start with and which mods to add as you go, et cetera. So that's really kind of like 2 or 3 topics, but we'll kind of hit all of them as part of like this whole how to get into track days.
Right. Yeah, and then one thing to note, we're not going to be able to absolutely cover like absolutely everything. We'll just offer, tips or advice that we can think of off the top of our heads. Of course, there's going to be other things that we don't mention that we may leave out. But hey, let's make this a video where you can offer more advice, or if someone's reading through the comments, they'll be like, hey, we forgot about this. Let me add this to the list of things that could be helpful for people who are coming to this video.
Yeah, and just a fun fact, Alex mentioned that he's been tracking for 3 years. I think we've all been tracking for almost exactly 3 years now. So we're kind of all in the same boat in terms of how much progress we've made. We've all hit our fair share of snags here and there, but just know that we're not like veterans of this. We're kind of intermediate.
And we're still learning every time we go.
Exactly.
All right, so time's up. Let's see what it shows, I guess,
so
your
face
masterpiece.
It on that camera, maybe.
This.
Or this one.
Okay.
It should be pretty obvious.
Hey, that's a lot better than what I was trying to think. Sven, why don't you give it a stab?
I already know what it is, especially
you already know? Okay,
the color that he picked.
Blue, it's not the RX, right? No.
It is.
Oh, is that the RX-8?
Yeah.
So, okay.
I
think the back end really does it for me. The back is
what does it.
I tried to make it a triangle because they had the triangle in the hood.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And there's a lot of little other things that I'm just really bad at.
That's way better than my attempt.
Dude, if you watch the first episode, you can see our beautiful drawings, but
horrible. But yeah, so that car has significance to me because it's actually the only car I've really tracked. I've driven a few other cars like once or twice, but that was my main car. It was my learning tool, and it's basically helped me get to where I am now.
Yep. Awesome.
Yeah. Sweet.
All right, well, thanks for that drawing and a little introduction. So let's go ahead and get started and start talking about, or answering the question that was provided for us.
Yeah, so I guess in terms of the whole track day topic, let's get into just track day tips, general tips for beginners. Like, how do you get into a track day? Let's say you already have a car, you daily drive in, whatever. You never really prepped it for the track. How do you get it ready? So in my opinion, the very first thing you should do is do all the maintenance before you even go to the track day.
I definitely agree. With track days, you're putting a lot more stress on your car. Whether you're a veteran or just a novice, you're already bringing the engine RPMs a lot higher. You're putting a lot more stress on the suspension components, the brakes and everything. So it's definitely worth giving everything a look over, at least, if not changing some of the fluids and everything.
Yeah, and a lot of the stuff is really simple. You don't have to go out there and spend $2,000 on coilovers. Like I see people do this a lot, or like buy like our compound tires for your first track day. There's no need. In my opinion, all you got to do is a few things: brake pads, .4 brake fluid. Make sure you have decent summer tires with enough tread, and anything safety related that you want to address. Like if you have a convertible, make sure you have adequate rollover protection.
Yes.
Invest in a proper helmet. By the way, this is something I learned the hard way. Test fit the helmet before you buy it.
Sure. Yeah.
My helmet's still kind of not really sitting right, as some commenters have noticed. And so just overall maintenance.
Yeah.
And then I think the second thing is in my opinion, it helped for you and me, Matt, to get into track days was to do a few autocross events to start, because they're cheap, like $40 to $60 usually for a day. Especially if you sign up for the practice events, they can be unlimited runs. So you get a lot of seat time. It's not the same as a track day. That's a whole other topic we can go into. But just in general, it teaches you car control and gets you involved in the community. And like you can start asking people for rides, and just starts building that being comfortable in a high performance driving event scenario.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. That's a great point. Autocross, you can feel limits of your vehicle within a really safe environment. I mean, you just have a lot of runoff and cones to deal with. Whereas a track, some tracks are set up there where there's walls and tire walls that you can spin out and, ricochet.
Autocross, the worst thing is like what? You hit a cone.
Yeah.
Right. Before we move on to the, autocross or go into that subject, back to maintenance really quick. I think, and maybe you guys can agree with me, at the minimum, of course, make sure your car's running regularly. So if I was completely beginner and I wanted to get, onto a track, I think at a minimum, definitely make sure, of course, you have some brakes biting action, but then your brake fluid, I think you have to change. You cannot have stock brake fluid.
The moment your stock, old .3 fluid boils, that's game over. You're not going to be able to track anymore. And the worst thing as a beginner is to lose valuable seat time that you paid for, especially because track days run $200 to $300 a day nowadays.
Right, exactly. So that's, before we move on to that next topic, we made great points about maintenance, sure, but at the minimum, make sure you have some brake pad and some grip or some tread left on your tires, and then absolutely change your brake fluid to a .4 fluid. So
I would say with tires, it doesn't even matter like what kind of tires you have. Like I started out on all seasons, and they're like 500 tread wear all seasons, but you could still go pretty fast. So that when the fine line between having grip and not having grip is just a little bit more vague, I would say. And so I mean, it's just a little bit harder if you're trying to work on car control until you like get more seat time. But otherwise, I would say another good way to hone your skills is to get an instructor too.
Yes, that's my next point.
Yeah.
So SpeedSF, for example, offers, if you sign up for the beginner run group, you get an instructor with you at least for the first few sessions, if not the entire day. Yeah. And these guys are really good, man. Like they're really fast. My first instructor, his name was Raymond. He drove a 350Z, and I think he won like one of the PlayStation Gran Turismo Academies or something. So he knew what he was doing. And the moment I rode with him, I was like, wow, like this is what I aspire to be. And it just taught me like breaking points, lines, and all that stuff like really early on. And having him ride with me and give me tips just made a world of difference. If I was out there by myself, especially if it was a track I've never driven before, I would be totally lost. So making sure you sign up for the right run group. Don't be like, I've done so many canyon days, bro. I'm going to sign up for advanced. A lot of times they don't check ahead of time if you're actually,
your skill that
your skill level. And you get thrown to advanced group and you've never done a track day before, you are going to just get
You're not going to learn anything.
You're not going to learn anything.
Pass you.
Yeah.
It's gonna be crazy.
You got to put your ego aside when you
put your ego aside.
Exactly.
Yes.
What about you for your first instructor experience? Do you have any recollection of that?
Actually, I never really had an instructor, but I did have a lot of friends that did do have more experience. Yeah, kind of coaching me, just giving me tips and everything, and that really helped too. So while they weren't like a full-on professional, they still had a fair share of knowledge, and it's just the difference with that is that you just got to take your kind of your tips with a grain of salt. Some people know their stuff, some people don't.
Sure.
And it's just a matter of weeding out what works for you and what doesn't.
Over time, it's trial and error. You'll figure out what
exactly.
works. Yeah.
But by getting those tips, it just kind of narrows it down. It gets you
On the right track. Right?
Exactly, gets you on the right track. I'd like to bring up one last point too. With beginners, when starting out the track, I would aim for consistency rather than trying to get your fastest lap time and your like PB every time. I would just say try to get your lap times to be like within 1 second of each other, within 0.5 seconds of each other every session. Of course, like if there's traffic and stuff, you might not be able to do that. But if you just have like open laps after open laps, as you get better, they should be closer too.
And moreover on that point, like once you learn the course, you pretty much understand the course and the overall lines, like to some extent. It helps like each lap to kind of like pick 1 or 2 corners that like you have trouble with, and even if you don't go all out for the entire lap, try to like focus on those 2 corners and get better. Because once you can string them all together, that's when you're gonna have a good lap and a good lap time.
Yeah, and on that point, I guess that probably segues, really well into our kind of the next topic. Would be like, so I'm a beginner. I signed up for my track day. I'm on the track. What do you guys suggest to these beginners, other than your great point about being consistent? Like, what do you think on the track to get faster? Like what goes on in your mind? Either of you can take that away to try to get better times.
Well, the very first thing is make sure you have a reliable car.
Okay.
Like, I mean, it depends on what car, and this will be kind of like a segue into our next topic, like track car platforms. Every different model has its own quirks, where it's like very well documented, or it should be, in terms of like what are the common failure points. One example, like the S2000 timing chain tensioner tends to leak oil. If you're leaking oil at the track, you're going to have to stop. There goes your entire day. Or like the Boxster with its overheating power steering or whatever. Just get those things taken care of beforehand so you can focus on the driving and not the maintenance.
So eliminate all these factors that would distract you from like driving your best drive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any tips for driving on the track for a beginner?
So now that you're driving on the track, you already got your car prepped and everything. So now that you're driving on it, your first few laps, definitely go, ease into it. Don't go all out your first lap. Make sure everything's warm. Try to look for points in the environment that you could use to reference. So like brake points or places just to get on the throttle. Other than that, try to closely work your way to the limit of the car. So not like, you don't want to go all out, like I said, but ease your way to the limit. Once you get to the limit, try to maintain the car there. And then if you go over it, you could probably correct it if it's just a little bit over. If it's a lot over, then
Right.
Yeah, right. But definitely just ease into it and look for a lot of points on the track that you're on, especially if you're new to the track, to just get, because without those you definitely won't be as consistent.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And, to kind of elaborate and explain maybe more like points on track. So like when you're on the track and you just take any turn on the course, you can pick a spot there to say, okay, I'm going to start braking at that point.
Yes. Yeah.
And over time, you can evaluate, is that too soon? Is that too late? And if it's too soon, okay, I'm going to pick another point in front of that to start braking there.
Because most corners have those braking marker, like the numbers, like the 4, 3, 2, 1.
Right. Or there's a cone or something, or sometimes there's like you can pick something that's like on another side of a chain link fence.
Even like
something.
a tree or something.
Yeah, a tree.
Yeah. Like Laguna.
Laguna has a tree.
The tree. Yeah.
At the end of the corkscrew, there's a tree out there with like a ribbon tied to it. And
I've never seen that ribbon.
Never seen it either.
Wait, really?
But,
okay.
I've done like 15 plus track days there. I've never seen that ribbon.
Okay. Yeah. So like you get these little things where mentally you start tracking how to do things in your car, and you have that point of reference, and then you can start just working on it, and then it becomes second nature almost. And so that's why I think that's a great point that you brought up to brake or pick out spots to brake or accelerate. I think that's a really good point you brought up there. So
so I think that pretty much covers the track day beginner tips. Obviously, we'd love to hear from you guys as that dog is barking.
Yep.
If you guys have any tips that we missed, please let us know in the comments. On to our next topic here. This is going to be a really fun one, and I'm sure we're going to get a lot of comments on this one.
Oh, boy.
Track car platforms. So one of the questions I got was like, I think it was on Instagram, for me personally, but we'll open up to all of us. If I could do it over again with my track car, so meaning my S2000, for around the same price as the S2000, what would I have gotten something different, first of all, and would I have built it differently than the way I did? So that kind of segues into the point, like, as you begin getting faster at the track, what mods should you do first and in what order? So I guess I'll go. instead of going into the individual cars first, let's just address the mod question because I think that's a more general point. In my opinion, the best order of doing mods for a track car is number one, safety.
Sure.
Safety, yes.
Rollover protection, helmet, having the proper seat.
Brakes.
Brakes go into safety too. The seat, harnesses, whatever. You don't necessarily have to have all of those things at the beginning, but as you start getting faster and get more comfortable, you should invest in all of those things. Second would be reliability. We touched on that earlier. Making sure your car is reliable and doesn't break down so that you can focus on the driving versus the maintenance aspect. Once you have those two things done, which is kind of like the boring things, the boring mods, then you start getting into, your wheels and tires, your brakes to some extent.
Like if you want to go BBK or not.
The big brake kit for more stopping power. And then your suspension. And then finally, the last thing I would do is investing in power mods and aero mods because that
definitely.
Just brings the level of a car so much higher that if you're not ready for it yet as a driver, then it's going to actually take you further back versus making progress.
Yeah, and many sports cars these days are actually, very well set up. Like the S2000 is a very well set up car. I don't think you need to do a lot to it to get it to be track ready even. Of course, the rollover, safety stuff, some brake stuff. But otherwise, the suspension's very good already. You don't really need to mod it in order to... I mean, you could get a lot faster, but the basic, the stock setup is very... I would say not beginner friendly, but it's still
capable.
Very
enough.
capable, yes.
Yeah,
very
definitely.
Like the moment you invest in a $2,000, $3,000 set of coilovers without even doing a track day, if anything, you'll probably be worse off because like having the stock suspension, having some body roll, being able to feel the weight transfer teaches you a lot about car control. And once you go stiff springs, stiff shocks, and all that, you kind of lose a little bit of that.
And the coilovers bring a lot of, maybe a little bit of variability too.
Yeah.
So like now you have all these
adjustment
things
points,
to change.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's better to just have a car that works, drive it, and just focus on the driving aspect.
Yeah, I think on that point, and everyone, everyone's gonna have like a different, opinion on this, but I think generally what I've found over time is for me, like I just drive my Fiesta or whatever. I think I'm just trying to get as good as consistent as possible in that, and I think anyone who has their starter car, try to get really as good as you can with that, and then start adding in different factors, like you said, like BBK or suspension, and then you can actually feel the difference that specific component makes. It's just like it's really tough to say which is the best one to go first. So, you were touching on safety, and that's kind of like the boring, not as fun things. But for those who are very beginner friendly, they might not want to invest immediately into a roll cage or something. So like if I'm a beginner, maybe not. If I'm a beginner and I don't have like the biggest budget, is there something that's out there that will give me a good bang for my buck? Knowing that, hey, I don't have a ton to spend. Is there something out there like maybe when you guys first did that maybe you did because it was fun or not that expensive as your first mod, I guess?
I would say seat.
A seat?
It depends on the car. Like some cars have good stock seats, but if your car has a big old floaty, like your Fiesta ST, I hate those seats so much. But
luckily my RX-8 had the R3 Recaro, so
exactly.
It held me in pretty well for the all season tires, right? So I don't get a lot of lean and stuff.
Okay. But if you don't have a good seat, you're going to be moving all over the place, and having a good like fixed bucket seat also helps you feel what the car is doing more, which helps you drive faster.
Yeah, so I think that's a good point. Like if you can, I know it's a drastic change. You're doing a lot to your car. If you can do a seat, I also agree. Like feeling what your car is doing, like I think that's almost just as valuable than just buying like coils or something. And I think that's a good suggestion for a first mod if you can. Yeah, that being said, you were talking about platforms in general. I think that segues nicely into the platforms conversation, and we kind of already wrote out or discussed a little bit of what we think are I don't want to say the best because once you say something definitive like that,
good contenders.
Good contenders as good platforms
for reasonably well priced.
Right, reasonable
around
price.
S2000 price. Right?
Yeah, like 10 to 20 we're talking is the price range for a beginner or novice driver that wants to get into tracking. So maybe we can start talking about I don't know if you want to start with the S2000, but we can maybe talk about other platforms.
Yeah, I know you had a list by like drivetrain layout, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and at the end of the day, like if you look at what different layouts there are, there's like front wheel drive cars, there's mid engine rear wheel drive cars, and there's 4-wheel drive cars. And so let me just pull this up real quick and let's see.
So yeah, let's start with front wheel drive. So what's
Yeah.
maybe one car in that list that you brought up as a good front wheel drive car for a platform?
The car with a lot of potential right now is, of course, a Civic Type R, but I mean that's
40
above
40
the
grand.
yeah 40 grand. So there's other cars that are probably as reliable and a lot cheaper. So we have the Civic Si, the 9th gen, 8th gen. They're all well in that price range right now, I would say.
Even like sub 10K, you can get like.
Yeah, you could get a pretty decent 8th gen.
I've seen the like 07, 08 ones
Yeah, so the 8th gen,
on
yeah.
Craigslist for like six to 7 grand all day long.
Yeah.
They're reliable as hell too.
Yeah, and then you could even go way back more to like the Integra, the older Civics too, and those are you could pick up for dirt cheap, I think.
Basically, as far as front wheel drive car track cars go, like Honda's
Honda's
name
pretty
of the
good.
game.
But
Right.
what about outside of Honda? I mean, we also have the Mazda Speed 3. Mazda Speed 3.
I've seen a few of those.
Those I've seen a few as well.
Fun car, but torque steer galore.
Yeah, exactly. Torque steer and I guess some reliability issues if you start to tune the engine.
turbo, yeah.
And then another good contender is the Eclipse, like the DSM, first gen, second
That's
gen.
a good point.
I don't see a lot of them, but they had. I think the first and second gen had the double wishbone suspension, if
okay.
I remember correctly. Don't quote me on that.
Okay.
But so very high potential. Plus, 4G63. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So-
then there's the GTI also with like the review I just did on Jeff's GTI.
Yeah, the GTI has always been a good car. The Mini Cooper. Something I
Mini
didn't think
Cooper,
about.
that's a great one.
Oh yeah. Honorable mention, Fiesta.
Fiesta.
Fiesta ST and the Focus ST.
Yeah.
You
Both
get the
very good
Fiestas
cars.
for less than 15 grand now.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Pretty
Same with the
appreciation
Focus
is
actually.
felt.
I think both cars you could get for under
Like 15 -ish?
around 15. Yeah.
Used, yeah, definitely. And you definitely hit the nail on the head with the front wheel drive platform. I really enjoy it. I think it's super fun. I go at it super hard out there, and you don't have the risk of, spinning out as much, because if you feel the rear end coming out, you just apply a little more throttle and it straightens out.
Exactly.
And I feel like I'm gonna try to really go at it on this front wheel drive platform, but definitely a great list of cars that you brought up for that. And so like I said, if you have any other suggestions for the front wheel platform, leave them in the comments. Let's go to the next platform that you have.
I had,
there.
of course, the front engine rear wheel drive car. So there's tons of contenders in that section.
This is my personal favorite.
Exactly.
So I know we can go on
Yeah.
forever for other. So let's only do like three over.
Let's just how about let's each pick 3 that we would.
All right. Yeah.
So you go first.
Well, of course, being an RX-8 driver, I would like to say the RX-8 is something that is pretty reliable on the track and very beginner friendly, because it does have a longer wheelbase, not that much torque. So it is a little bit harder to spin out, and usually when it's very controllable because of the suspension geometry. But if you don't want to deal with the reliability of the rotary, you could always go with the MX-5, the NC, ND, even the NA/NB. Shorter, more fun to drive probably.
And very cheap to maintain.
Yeah, very cheap.
Yeah.
Exactly. And one more car, you could probably, I think you could get BRZs pretty cheap these days.
Yes, yeah. Under 15K for BRZ FRS.
The depreciation, man, crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I can go to, I think a good one, I'm just going to put another name out, or another vote for the BRZ and the FRS platform. There are so many drivers that drive that car now. It's kind of taken over as the most popular car to see at the track for
definitely.
me. Like, I just went to a track event yesterday, and they had a whole group, like a GT86 group that came in. They're all like in their own little club or whatever.
Oh yeah, they
It's
have
a
like the
tight-knit
cup.
community.
Yeah.
Tight-knit community. So, +1 for that. And of course, there's the S2000. I love the S2000. I think it's a cool car. I haven't had one personally, but I've driven Fentons, and I'll let you talk a little bit more on that platform. Actually, that being said, let's just move over to the S2000.
Okay, so obviously I'm going to pick S2000, but there's a very good reason, because I think as like someone like me who got into track days relatively easily, I would say, and I got comfortable pretty quick. I think with something like a Miata, I would have like hit the limit of that car much quicker, and then I would have been like, well, where do I go from now? Then I'm going to start dropping money into power mods, et cetera, et cetera. With the S2000, to a point you mentioned earlier, it's like it's almost ready to go out of the box as
Yeah.
a track car, and it has higher limits, it has good power.
It's
And-
something that you keep for a long time.
Yeah, you can keep
Yeah.
it for a long time, and the track community is very close knit, lots of modding potential,
Mm-hmm.
and just like the way it handles, like it's a fingertips kind of driving experience. So like for someone like me who really likes being on the edge, because it makes me feel like a bigger adrenaline rush. It's more rewarding when I get a good lap. It has much higher potential than I as a driver am capable of at the moment. So it pushes me to keep learning on it versus constantly swapping out different cars. And then BRZ FRS, I also another vote for that. So I think that makes 3 votes. Just because it's such a common car now, easy to source. It's relatively new. You can daily drive it pretty comfortably. It's practical. You can actually fit some tires in the back and whatever.
All your track equipment.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then third, I will not go Miata because that's the easy answer. It's
You already
always
had
the answer.
right.
Yeah, I already had the
Yeah,
Miata votes.
I will actually go E36 M3 because you can
Spicy.
get those for less than 10 grand. They have a decent amount of power, 240 horsepower. You can daily drive them. They have a lot of track potential, and it's like the M3 is like the epitome of the FR platform car in terms of like how it handles. You can power oversteer it all day long. It has a lot more torque than an S2000 or a Miata.
Yeah.
And it's just a fun car. But that being said, you are going to spend more time wrenching on it in maintenance.
I know, that's what I was about to bring up. The reliability is a little bit spotty, especially now that they're so old. I wouldn't worry
Right.
about if they were a little newer, then maybe not. But now they're reaching about 20 years old, a little bit more, a little
Yeah.
older. So
Like
just
it's a late 90s.
make sure you get one that's been looked over well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, so that's kind of the FR platform, and we kind of dropped a few cars there that would be good, budget friendly, have a good community, and other reasons why they would be awesome. So like I said, if you have any more suggestions, leave them down below in the comments. But yeah, how many more platforms do we have?
We have mid rear and we have all wheel drive
Okay,
Okay,
so
let's just very quickly go through. Let's just do the
Because-
top 2 each.
because there's not many in those.
There's not
either.
many. There's
Yeah.
not many.
yeah, I'll let
And-
you two take that away.
Okay.
For those.
So
Go
mid
ahead.
rear, I would say the MRS or no, well MRT Spider here. Sorry.
Okay, MR2 Spider.
MRT Spider. And let's see, MRT Spider. There's the Boxster too. Those are 2 major ones that play
Yes.
in the budget that we're looking at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would
Actually-
have to agree.
Yeah, actually, yesterday at the track, I was in my friend's Boxster S, and he was doing some pretty good times in that, and he
Yeah.
was really fast.
It's a great car.
Yeah, and I love the engine behind you.
Sounds
That
so
sound in
good.
all MR cars. It sounds so great, and when you're really going through the gears, it sounds great on the track.
And those
so.
Porsche brakes out of the box, you just put some pads and fluid and you're good to go.
Oh,
Porsche
I know.
brakes are amazing.
He was smashing on his brakes, and his pads looked like didn't even deteriorate after one day. I was like,
Yeah.
what the heck? Mine are like dead.
Yeah.
So so those are great cars for the MR platform.
And a lot of people look at the MRT Spider as a great alternative for the Miata, and
Yeah.
Interesting.
Some people prefer it over the Miata too. So
It's a little bit more of a challenge
Yeah.
to drive.
and there's also not as much aftermarket support.
yeah, so there's pros and cons for it.
exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah. So for me, I would pick also the MR2 Spider because it's very, very lightweight. And for me, like lightweight beats pretty much everything when it comes to a track car because you're dealing with less stress on the car. You're dealing with, overall
Cheaper
better
consumables.
handling, cheaper consumables, tires, fluids, all that, oil, gas. So yeah, great platform. Also, I would say Boxster, but I'm just going to say Cayman because if you can afford the extra cost of the Cayman, it is a better track car because it's lighter and it's
Rigid and-
more rigid and it's fixed
Yeah.
top and all that. But that being said, there are some well-documented maintenance issues with those, but that's a whole nother topic.
Cool. And then for the final platform.
All-wheel drive. So you have the Evo, whatever gens you want.
Yeah.
STI, although it depends on which models. I think only
Yeah.
certain ones will meet the budget. RS, but that doesn't meet
Focus
the
RS?
Yeah, the Focus RS.
Yeah, that's a little
Yeah.
outside
30
that,
grand.
but
And
sure.
I don't know about the Golf R either.
Golf R is a good car, but it's kind of more daily focused.
Yes. But I have seen them at the track, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say Evo and STI
yeah.
for sure.
It's,
Or
it's
WRX.
always between those two, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
With
yeah.
maybe in like 5 or 10 years, the RS, assuming
Yeah.
they don't appreciate or
Yeah.
some,
I agree.
whatever.
That's an easy pick. Evo
Yeah.
is my top choice. It has the best handling out of all the all-wheel drive cars in that price range. STI WRX is a good choice. There's a lot of aftermarket support. I'm not a huge fan of the way they handle because they're a little more understeer focused, but still a good way to get into track days.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do see a decent amount of them out there as well. More RSs now actually than STIs.
Yeah.
They've slowly started not coming out as much. Maybe it's just the area I'm in or the area that we're in. But yeah, like I said, it's always you just see a ton of BRZs, FRSs.
Yeah.
But mostly everyone's driving out there is the real world platform with the front engine. So like me, you got your Miatas
Yeah.
and all
Yeah.
the other.
That's why I want
cars
to
that
narrow
we
it down
see.
so much too.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Last topic here, which is kind of related actually, is the manual transmission as like kind of a dying art form, and just our take on transmissions in general nowadays. I've kind of changed my position on this in the last few years. I used to be diehard manual, you know. I was like, you know, the moment I learned how to drive stick, I was like, everyone who doesn't know how to drive stick, you just, you know, you suck.
You get that
Yeah.
manual transition driver
Elitist.
elitism.
Yeah, exactly. But now that that's kind of cooled down, it's, in my opinion, there are cars that should not have a manual transmission. Like a Ferrari 488 GTB or like a Lamborghini Aventador with a manual transmission. As fun as that sounds on paper, I mean, the gear ratios right now with the dual clutches are so close together, and it goes through the revs so fast when you accelerate. I mean, there's 600 plus horsepower cars. You're not going to be able to keep up with a manual.
Yeah.
Unless you're like a professional. So like to the average Joe, like it just doesn't make sense to have manuals in those cars. That being said, there are some manufacturers that still offer manual transmissions in very high performance cars. We talked about the GT350 Mustang. We talked about the
911.
the GT3. There are options still out there if you want to roll your own gears, but I do think there is a place for the dual clutch, and there even is still a place for the conventional automatic, the torque converter automatic. For example, like the Corvette still gives you the option of 8-speed, which, by the way, I think is like not a very good 8-speed. But like in some cars, it makes sense because it's more daily drivable. It's smoother when you're just driving around.
And some people say the CVT has a lot of potential too.
Yeah,
I don't know the
interesting.
science behind it. They say there's a lot of friction loss right now. I mean, which is true. Probably why not a lot. I don't think a lot of people use it right now.
Subaru uses it.
Oh yeah, well
Yeah.
there you go. But they say that has a lot of potential. If supposedly banned from some sort of racing.
I just don't like the fact that you mash the gas on a CVT and it just stays at the same RPM.
Yeah,
while you
that's
accelerate.
kind of
the
it's
enjoyment
annoying
of
It's
the sound.
Yeah.
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 Just feel a little bit more manly every time you go through the just hear it drop down a little bit, go up again.
Yeah, I think, and it's unfortunate. It's like the whole manual transmission talk versus the auto talk. It's where the industry is going. And at the end of the day, you got to sell the cars, right? So I don't know for what reason why they're selling less and offering less, but I know, we're buying less as a car community.
I mean, millennials, like we're all millennials, but like 99
millennials.
point whatever percent of millennials don't give a damn about
Yeah,
the
a lot of people use
transmission.
cars as just transportation from A to B, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
Right,
So it's the
right.
consumer's fault again, but
Again, it's your fault.
yeah. I mean, let's just not blame them. It's just,
Yeah.
just the fact that people are getting lazy, and people want to eat while they drive. They're stuck in traffic. I get stuck in traffic every day now. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a matter of convenience. Now.
I wish there was a world where we could have that and have manuals, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, car manufacturers don't really have the luxury of catering to everyone. They need to
Right.
focus on what
One
sells the most.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
All the bottom line. So maybe we can revisit that topic in depth and talk about more aspects of that. But we thought we would touch base on it because someone asked that question in the comments. And I think that pretty
That's
much
pretty much it.
wraps up this episode. So
Yeah,
take
so-
a outro.
Thanks again for tuning in. We're going to try to have obviously we had Alex on as a guest this time because of the track day discussion, and he's very experienced in that respect. We're going to try to have more guests on depending on what topics you guys want to hear about. So let us know in the comments on Instagram, on Facebook, any of my social media. What topics would you like to hear about next time? Thanks again for watching, and see you guys next time.